let's talk about Martavious Collins, 6'3", 241 athlete. A lot of people label him as a tight end or an H-back. I read somewhere that he may want to play some wide receiver. What are you hearing about this kid, and specifically, why do you think he decommitted from Alabama?
Well, look, I mean, I think there's really two types of decommitments, right? You've got your, hey, I'm opening things back up because maybe I committed early and school X is still very much alive. And then you've got your others where it's like something happened and it's like both parties are moving on. And I think this is where Collins is with Alabama. There's really no buzz or confirmation that Alabama is going to continue pursuing Collins, and Collins is going to continue to consider Alabama on his end. So this one lies on the ladder of those two examples. And obviously that's great news for everybody that's in pursuit. Auburn hosted him at the end of January for one of those massive junior day weekends that we've seen stacking up there on the plains. Miami, a couple other schools are trying to get involved here. So I think it's going to be fascinating to watch going forward. There's certain things that just draw more eyeballs. And if you're Auburn and you grab a former Alabama commitment, just like the inverse always seems to be a big deal, that's a very big deal from a recruiting momentum optics perspective. And unfortunately, I know some people are listening to this saying, oh, who cares about the optics? It matters in recruiting. That and perception really do matter in recruiting, because these are teenagers that are taking all of this in. So just like Walker White's decision was such a splash, this type of flip, for lack of a better phrase, if it were to go down, would feel somewhat similar. So I do think that Auburn is maybe in the driver's seat of this thing. I wonder now, with him being on the market for just a couple of days, do other programs begin to recruit Collins as opposed to those that were already kind of involved? Do new schools try to jump into this mix if and when he starts to take additional visits and maybe prolong this thing? But if it's about the short term and locking in another spot, you got to feel really good about Auburn's chances relative to his most recent visits.
Yeah. I mean, the timing when they make these decisions matter, right? And the fact that Walker mentioned him by name and then he decommits. He went to Auburn's junior day, which Walker was also there. I mean, it sounded like that was a super successful weekend despite no public commitments that weekend, John. I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of signs pointing towards Auburn being the unofficial leader for this guy until Martavious comes out and says something otherwise. I think that's kind of what a lot of people are going to believe.
Yeah, and we should, right? We track just as much as we track what kids say. You'll hear me say it all the time. You got to track what they do. And if you make a visit to one school, decommit from another a week later, I mean, there's usually some cause and effect there, and it's usually as simple as it seems. So yeah, I think it's if it's a total reset and he's starting over, then we'll see, right? Who become the major players? Does Auburn, does Miami, do these other schools stick with him? Or does this become, hey, I made one decision, maybe it was too early. Now I think I'm getting ready to make another. If it becomes that scenario, you absolutely have to feel great about Auburn's chances. But yeah, tight end's one of the big priorities in this class, clearly.